The day I became the most hated man in Lakeside Estates started with a pounding at my gate and ended with federal agents digging up tunnels under my barn. If you think that sounds like something out of a crime show, well, just wait. It all kicked off when my wife Sarah refused to open our old barn for the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, Karen Wellington, who came armed with her clipboard like she was serving warrants, not HOA complaints. Sarah told her polite as ever that unless she had the right papers, she wasn't setting foot on our property. So what did Karen do? She whipped out her phone, dialed 911, and announced with the drama of a soap opera villain that she needed immediate police response for suspected noncompliance. What Karen didn't know, what no one in Lakeside Estates knew, was that Sarah had just been sworn in as the new police chief for our district. So when the cruiser rolled up and my wife stepped out in her fresh uniform, Karen's face went sheet white, and I'm not kidding. The silence that followed could have been cut with a knife. You'd think the story ends there. Karen humiliated, everyone laughs, roll credits. But you'd be wrong. A week later, Sarah launched an official investigation, not into us, but into the entire HOA's practices. That's when things got serious. Suddenly, we were the villains in Karen's carefully curated Facebook posts, painted as a corrupt cop, and her sketchy husband hiding God knows what in that old barn. Overnight, we went from new neighbors to the town's favorite conspiracy theory. Local headlines screamed, "Police chief's family hides behind barn door," and Internal Affairs was knocking on Sarah's office door before we'd even unpacked half our moving boxes. I'll back up a second so you understand what that barn meant to me. My name's Marcus Ashford, and 6 months before all this, I inherited 15 acres of land that my grandfather worked till his knuckles bled land with a barn he built himself back in the 50s. The roof's so old it sings in the rain, and yeah, maybe it's not Pinterest perfect, but it's the kind of place where every nail has a story. Sarah and I knew moving here would ruffle the neighborhood's perfectly groomed feathers. What we didn't count on was making a lifelong enemy on day 2. Karen introduced herself like she was running for president of the universe, pearls heels, the whole deal. She showed up with a stack of rule books talking about community standards and how the barn situation would have to be addressed. Over the next few weeks, she basically stalked us driving by twice a day, taking photos, measuring, and jotting down notes. She was obsessed, and every note in our mailbox got a little more aggressive until finally she marched up the drive demanding immediate inspection, which led to her now legendary meltdown at our gate. But embarrassment wasn't the end of it. Karen pivoted to full-scale warfare. First, it was social media twisting every fact, tagging news outlets, weaponizing words like corruption and accountability. She had the local paper running with headlines about conflicts of interest, and by Monday, Sarah was told to stay away from all HOA matters pending an investigation. My wife, who spent 20 years building her reputation, sat at our kitchen table and said, "One woman might ruin everything I've worked for." While Karen was playing PR chess, I was learning just how deep her obsession went. Our neighbor Jimmy Rodriguez, a quiet ex-Army guy, pulled me aside one night. He'd been seeing expensive cars at Karen's place, overheard her talking about international partnerships and inventory transitions. Not your typical HOA drama. Jimmy used to be Karen's business partner before she ruined him with the same tactics, false accusations, legal harassment, driving him into bankruptcy so she could take over. Right when I started wondering if I was losing my mind, Mrs. Blackwood, a World War II nurse who notices everything came by for tea hands shaking. She told us she'd seen foreign men meeting with Karen trucks with Canadian plates parked near our property at 3 a.m., and men surveying the land with equipment that definitely wasn't for gardening. When she said, "Your grandfather always said there were secrets here worth protecting," I felt a chill run up my spine. Clearly, Karen's campaign was about a lot more than barn aesthetics. Digging deeper, Jimmy and I discovered Karen had been forging documents, zoning permits, applications for commercial warehouses using my name. There was a whole paper trail with $12 million in supposed investment running through shell companies tied to Karen. It read like the blueprint for a major smuggling operation. Sarah, seeing the scale of it, said, "Marcus, this isn't just HOA harassment. This is organized crime." It all exploded when Sarah called in her old friend Ray Morrison, a detective with a talent for following dirty money. Morrison spent 2 hours at our kitchen table, connecting the dots, fraudulent permits, fake board members, shell companies, all pointing to Karen as the linchpin in a smuggling network stretching from Montreal to Mexico City. Our land, specifically the barn, was the missing puzzle piece thanks to the old farm roads and the way our property connects to interstate highways. Just as Morrison's investigation ramped up, I got a call from a lawyer in Boston. Said he'd uncovered a sealed codicil to my grandfather's will, only to be opened if our property was ever threatened. Inside was a hand-drawn map of the land, a note telling me to check a secret spot in the barn, and legal provisions that made selling or developing the property a bureaucratic nightmare for anyone who tried. That night, Sarah and I found a hidden metal box tucked in the barn's old bookshelf. Inside, documents showing our property was once a stop on the Underground Railroad, with tunnels still intact, plus records designating the land as eligible for federal historic status. Now I knew what Karen was after, not just the location, but the hidden tunnels perfect for moving goods unseen. The next morning, Karen showed up with 2 guys in expensive suits, offering to buy us out for 3 times what the land was worth, threatening unnecessary complications if we didn't sell. What she didn't know was the feds had wired our property the night before. Every word she said, her veiled threats, the details she let slip was recorded. The feds moved fast. Within days, Morrison's task force rolled up the entire operation. Raids, arrests, trucks seized, and Karen in handcuffs, still shouting about how we didn't understand the people we were dealing with. Federal agents found her secret office deep in the barn's tunnels, files, cash, and evidence tying her to international smuggling, money laundering, and even her husband's murder, which Jimmy had quietly suspected for years. Turned out half the HOA board was fake, just names on paper invented to give Karen cover for her schemes. When the dust settled, Karen was sentenced to life, and the tunnels were preserved as a National Historic Site, never to be used for crime again. The government paid damages, helped us turn the barn into a museum, and Lakeside Estates had to completely overhaul its HOA. Sarah and I were asked to lead the new association, determined that no one would ever use local power for criminal gain again. Funny thing is, all we wanted was a quiet life on a piece of family land, but sometimes the battles you don't choose find you anyway. Turns out ordinary people really can make a difference if they're stubborn enough to stand their ground, even when the whole town thinks they're the bad guys. So what do you think? Is justice just about the law? Or is it about standing up to the people who think they're untouchable? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear where you stand on the line between community and control, and if you believe, like my grandfather did, that the land can always be protected so long as you're smart enough to fight for it.